Frieza wronged and judged all this time? Who really is the villain of this story? The destruction of the Saiyan planet, the prophecy that Beerus received, and the plan that precedes everything. Your head is going to explode with all this information. Frieza is really going to become good, and I will prove it to you. Go subscribe to the channel now. Leave your like and activate the bell. It was all a lie, guys. What they told us about Frieza is completely mistaken. And now what will happen? And with all this, we have agreements made with intriguing terms, and this brought something that really stayed in the air. Is Frieza the true villain? The Dragon Ball universe has always been a stage of secrets, hidden forces, and manipulations that were not always clear to those who were at the center of the story. The figure of Frieza, for example, for decades was seen only as the cruelest space tyrant that ever existed, a being who spread destruction for pleasure, for vanity, and for an excessive desire for power. But this view was incomplete. Is Frieza nothing more than a piece in a bigger game? Manipulated by gods who already knew about the hidden potential of a race many judged merely as barbaric? When analyzing more deeply the relationship between Whis and Beerus with the Saiyans, a theory begins to gain strength. Frieza was used as a catalyst, the necessary executioner to transform the surviving Saiyans into the warriors of the prophecy. This idea gains consistency when we go back to the beginning. Beerus, the god of destruction of Universe 7, had the clear function of maintaining cosmic balance by eliminating what no longer served or what, for some reason, became a threat to universal order. But Beerus was never blind. He was cunning and, above all, guided by instincts and intuitions that proved accurate. When he determined that planet Vegeta should be destroyed, the official justification was simple. The Saiyans were becoming dangerous, a wild race that could cause more chaos than order. However, looking from another angle, it seems that this destruction was carefully planned to pave the way for the emergence of something much greater. Frieza was the executing hand of this plan. The Emperor of Evil always believed he had total freedom to dominate and destroy. But the truth is that he was never not being watched and, in a way, used by the gods. Whis, with his calm and distant gaze, knew that only through pain, loss, and hatred would the Saiyans awaken the hidden power they carried. And Beerus, even without showing himself openly, was fully aware that it was not him who needed to guide this evolution. To mold warriors worthy of challenging destiny, an implacable enemy was necessary, someone who showed no mercy, who tested the physical and emotional limits of each survivor. Frieza was that someone, and here the Dragon Balls factor also enters. Both Frieza and Whis have already talked about the Dragon Balls at very important moments in the story, but in very different ways. Frieza has a direct and almost obsessive connection with the balls since his first appearance in Dragon Ball Z. In the Namek arc, he practically moves the entire Empire to hunt the Dragon Balls, because his goal was to ask for immortality and thus become invincible. Later, in Dragon Ball Super, he mentions them again when he is revived by his subordinates using the Earth Balls, and then also demonstrates knowledge about the Super Dragon Balls during the Tournament of Power, since all the gods and warriors knew that the reward would be exactly a wish on them. In the manga, Frieza never loses this interest. He even acknowledges how powerful they are. But his focus shifts a bit when he starts relying more on the power he gained through training. Whis, on the other hand, talks about them in a very different way, almost always as someone observing from the outside with neutrality. He knows both the Earth Balls and the Namek Balls, but his biggest mention is the Super Dragon Balls. He is the one who explains to Goku and Vegeta what they are, how they were created by Zalama, and their absurd size, scattered across the universes. Whis never shows desire to use them, because as an angel he is already at a level that doesn't need that kind of resource. But he gives precious information. It was through him, for example, that the warriors of Universe 7 really understood the weight of the Tournament of Power, since the wish on the Super Balls could change everything. That is, Frieza always talks about the balls as a tool to amplify his power or guarantee his survival, while Whis talks about them informatively as part of the cosmic knowledge he carries. In fact, the balls would be a problem for Beerus, because Vegeta could reclaim his planet if he used them earlier, even because the order came from a god, but Frieza was the one who executed it. So yes, that would be possible. In a way, they knew the remaining Saiyans would not do it. And this gains more strength by the fact that it was allowed for the Z Warriors to be revived more than once, guaranteeing that Goku would have the appropriate training in the other world. Anyway, given all this about the balls, here comes a detail that also changes the entire perspective. Frieza, with his galactic empire, had full access to all the Saiyans. He could, if he wanted, have exterminated each one of them. even the last child. But he did not. Vegeta, the prince, was left alive, and not by chance. Frieza claimed he kept him alive out of convenience, out of interest. But the truth is that there was something greater preventing him from finishing the job. Vegeta was, from the beginning, the chosen one, the pride of his lineage. The weight of his heritage and the dormant potential in his blood made him the natural candidate for the title of Warrior of the Prophecy. Beerus had already foreseen this, and Frieza, consciously or not, fulfilled the role of guardian of this destiny, feeding Vegeta's hatred and thirst for power through years of humiliation and manipulation. But there was a variable that not even the gods could fully predict. Kakarado, the Saiyan sent to Earth. Goku grew far from the brutality of his people, cultivated by human values of kindness, justice, and compassion. Unlike Vegeta, who carried the weight of vengeance and pride, Goku flourished with the lightness of someone who fought not out of hatred, but out of love for the challenge, for the almost innocent need to test his own limits. And it was this purity that ended up breaking the drawn destiny. When Goku awakened as a Super Saiyan in front of Krillin's death, he didn't just challenge Frieza. He broke the plan that placed Vegeta as the only bearer of Saiyan evolution. The anger of Frieza toward Goku was never just about the defeat on Namek. It was born from the fact that Goku embodied the error, the break in the logic that had been established. He wasn't supposed to be the chosen one. He wasn't supposed to carry that power. For Frieza, it was unacceptable that a low-class Saiyan, someone who had escaped by mere chance from the destruction of his people, had become the true bearer of the prophecy. The resentment wasn't just personal pride, but also because, deep down, Frieza knew he was being used. He had followed the gods' game, he had spared Vegeta, he had kept the cycle turning, and yet Goku appeared to mess up all the pieces. That deep rancor was what fueled Frieza for years. His mind, brilliant and cruel, couldn't accept that his entire role had been reduced to an instrument of destiny. That's why he came back. That's why he surpassed himself. That's why he constantly sought new forms, like the golden and the black one. But the change wouldn't be completed just through the pursuit of power. Something greater was necessary. Something that made him realize that continuing to be just a piece in a game wasn't enough. And that moment arrived in the Tournament of Power. There, Frieza saw himself side by side with Goku and Vegeta, fighting not only for himself, but for the survival of the entire Universe 7. The irony was unbearable for him. After decades of being the mortal enemy of the Saiyans, now his existence was tied to the victory of those very warriors. He witnessed closely Goku's determination, Vegeta's evolution, Gohan's growth, the resilience of every single one who represented the universe. Frieza, who always believed that life was nothing more than a game of power and domination, had to face the reality that there was something greater than himself. It was in the moment when he fought alongside Goku against Jiren that it really clicked. For the first time, Frieza wasn't fighting to impose his dominance, but because he recognized that there was no other path. In that joint attack, he realized that all his trajectory of hatred and resentment had only served to strengthen them, that his role as executioner had produced results he never imagined. And, in a nearly paradoxical way, it was in that moment that Frieza began freeing himself from the destiny the gods had traced for him. The real reason Frieza changed wasn't remorse. It wasn't spontaneous kindness, but the realization that, throughout his life, he had been used. Beerus destroyed the Saiyan planet because he already knew that a warrior of the prophecy would appear. Whis followed Goku's evolution closely because he knew he carried something that went beyond normal instinct. Frieza, in the end, realized that he had served as the whipping force necessary to shape those warriors. But upon seeing that Goku and Vegeta broke limits and became something greater than even the gods expected, he understood that remaining trapped in hatred meant continuing to be a slave in a game that was never his. Frieza didn't exactly become a hero, but he stopped being just a villain. He found, in the chaos of the Tournament of Power, a new perspective. Maybe it's not about redemption, but about freedom. By helping Goku in the end, he made it clear that he was no longer the same, not only because he evolved in strength, but because he finally understood the truth. The destruction of Planet Vegeta, his own role as executioner, and even the emergence of Goku were not coincidences, but pieces of a board manipulated by gods who saw beyond. And so, the space tyrant who previously saw the Saiyans as trash ended up understanding that, deep down, they were the true purpose of his existence. He had been the hammer that shaped the blade, but never the warrior who would wield it. And it was precisely that understanding that made Frieza change, not out of remorse, but because he discovered that, alongside those he once swore to destroy, there was a chance to finally break free from the invisible chains that always tied him to the destiny imposed by the gods. So, yes, Frieza was a tool, such proof that he could have betrayed Universe 7 in the tournament, but didn't. Frieza could indeed have allied with Sidra, the god of destruction of Universe 9, and this almost happened in Dragon Ball Super. When Goku was recruiting warriors for the Tournament of Power, he knew he needed really strong people, and that's when Frieza was resurrected. This return created distrust among the other universes, and Sidra, along with his universe's Supreme Kai, saw an opportunity. If they eliminated Frieza before the tournament, they would weaken Universe 7's team. They even gave Frieza a destruction energy to kill him. Except at that moment, Frieza showed exactly what he is: cold, calculating, and manipulative. He not only resisted the attack, but also made it clear that he could, if he wanted, switch sides. What many don't notice is that this point in the story opens a huge gap for theories. If Frieza had truly accepted an alliance with Sidra, he wouldn't be just a piece within Universe 7. He could have become a direct ally of a god of destruction, placing him in a unique position. Sidra, in turn, didn't have the same level of respect and fear that Beerus inspired, and maybe he would even accept Frieza as an ally instead of just a subordinate. But here comes Frieza's genius. He never wanted to be anyone's servant. He hated having been manipulated by the gods, including Beerus, and therefore the idea of joining Sidra wasn't truly appealing. Frieza wanted to use that opportunity to test himself, to measure how far he could deceive or manipulate even a deity. He played with the situation, but in the end, he knew that the Tournament of Power was the perfect chance to show everyone, including the gods, that he was no longer just a pawn on the board. So yes, Frieza could have allied with Sidra, but it wouldn't have been out of loyalty or trust. It would have been just another strategic move to gain temporary advantage. Deep down, Frieza would never accept being under the shadow of a god of destruction inferior to Beerus, because his ego simply wouldn't allow it, and he knows he is being manipulated. But what Beerus didn't expect was Frieza's latest appearance, his black form. He didn't kill Goku or Vegeta, who were already defeated, but let them live, showing that his plan is no longer against the Saiyans. He understood who really manipulates who, and he will change this lore in Dragon Ball Super. Wait for it.